This video made possible by Killer Visual Strategies. Visit killervisualstrategies.com.
Thank you very much for taking your time to come and listen to us talk about the future of social games, and also thank you to GeekWire for having us and hosting us for this panel. It's very bright up here, so if I'm squinting, I'm not. Anyway, so a bit of scene setting first, because I've got a mic and an audience, so I'll use the opportunity to talk to you a little bit about the ISGA and what our mission is, but also about the games industry in general before we drill down onto why it's so important as an industry, why it's important for this state, and what does the future hold, good and potentially bad. So we founded the International Social Games Association almost 7 years ago, 6.5, 7 years ago. I was working at Facebook at the time and working with games companies on the platform. And we had a meeting, and it was, actually this industry is underrepresented, and we need someone to go out and be the voice, make sure we understand the industry. So we do research, we do best practice to ensure that all the companies are making best efforts in everything from privacy to advertising practices. And we go around the world talking about games and their importance and significance. But games are big business. I was going to ask for a show of hands, but I wouldn't be able to see them because the lights are so bright. The video games industry is bigger than the TV industry. The video games industry is bigger than the film industry. It is the biggest thing that many people just aren't aware of, and yet we have hundreds of millions of people playing mobile games and console games. So it's an incredibly vibrant place with new games coming out all the time. We've seen the PC gaming turn into console gaming, both of which are incredibly vibrant. In 2007, it was the launch of the iPhone. 2008, the launch of the App Store. And today we have hundreds of thousands of apps available at our fingertips to be able to reach out, have a bit of entertainment, and keep ourselves entertained. So many people think of gamers as being kids in basements or their attics or stuck in their room playing games. It's simply not true. The average gamer demographic changes depending on the genre. So Fortnite tends to be a slightly younger audience and slightly skewed male, but the Bubble Burst games, the Match 3s, the Candy Crushes of the world is a much older and a more female audience. So there's a lot of kind of myths and misconceptions about the industry. So when we talk about social games, we're talking specifically about mobile games. The games that you do pick up on your phone, people call them casual games. They're typically free to play. There might be ad sponsors in there. They might have some in-app purchases, but the typical player never spends any money in these games. It's about 5 to 10% of people will ever make a purchase within them. So it is a difficult market too, but I'll let some of the business owners talk more about that, and I'll shut up now, really. I'm going to ask my panelists here to introduce themselves, and then we'll get into some questions. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Derrick Morton. I'm the CEO of FlowPlay. FlowPlay is a Seattle-based company. We have 80 employees worldwide, 60 here in our Seattle studio. We make what are called casual MMORPGs, massive multiplayer online role-playing games. We have 3 games out right now. One is Our World, mostly played by teenagers, and Vegas World and Casino World, which are massively multiplayer social casinos.
My name is Kristina Hudson, and I'm Executive Director of OneRedmond and the Washington Interactive Network. For the last 15 years, I've worked to promote, nurture, and grow the interactive entertainment industry in our state. And we have quite a large industry, as most of you may or may not know. We have over 400 companies, 23,000 employees, and this industry brings in sales of over $28 billion. So my job is to make sure that our government and community leaders understand the importance of this game, or this industry, and what it means to our local economy.
And I'm Paul Mathews. I'm the president of a game company called PLAYSTUDIOS. I'm also the chairman and one of the founders of the ISGA. And I thought the panel today would be one of those tables with the curtains, so I apologize for my, I didn't wear the right socks, so I apologize for that. PLAYSTUDIOS is about 360 people in 5 cities and 3 countries. We have operations in Hong Kong and Tel Aviv, Austin, San Francisco, and Las Vegas. And we make games in the genre that's known as social casinos. So it's gambling content that is not gambling, free to play, available to download in the app stores.
And I'm John Cuddihy. I'm a Senior Vice President, Deputy General Counsel for Scientific Games Corporation. We're a company of about 9,500 employees across 5 continents. One of our divisions, the social division, like Paul's company, develops and publishes social casino games for both mobile and tablet use.
Thank you all, and thank you for joining us here today. So, as I alluded to earlier, the app stores, the mobile stores are relatively new. We have a multi-billion-dollar industry that has sprung up in the space of 10, 15 years. Where do you think the industry is going, Derrick?
Oh, wow. It's growing in all directions, right? I mean, not only is mobile growing dramatically, PC's also growing, which nobody would have predicted a few years ago. There's new platforms, there's AR, VR. It's an exciting industry. It's also super challenging. It's very competitive. As Kristina pointed out, there's 400 companies just here in Seattle. I think the last thing I heard, there were 300 new games launching every day in the app stores. So it's an exciting and tough business. But all predictions are that there'll be at least 20% growth over the next several years.
Paul, do you have any
Yeah,
thoughts?
I mean, the future for games is really bright. People have been playing games forever, since there were people. And every day, 300 apps launch, is that what you said? Thousands of game developers around the world launch new features and functionality into existing games every day or launch new games. And it's just getting better and better. We run what's called live events, so every day there's something unique in the game for a player to consume that they haven't seen before. It's going to be, in I think 2021, $70 billion worldwide. So people just love playing games. Just go to any airport and watch what people are doing waiting for their flight. They're playing games.
So you mentioned there's a lot of games companies in the state. Could you talk to us a little bit more about that? What's happening here in Washington?
Sure, absolutely. When Washington Interactive Network started, we had 37 game companies, and like we said today, we have over 400. We have everything, of course, from your big companies like Microsoft and Nintendo and Amazon now with their game studios, but we have a predominant amount of small independent game companies. These are your 2-3-man shops, especially in the social mobile sector. It's an opportunity for people who are starting into this business to get in and create the product that they want to make and make some money at their business.
We've seen some phenomenon of games, that have seemed to be overnight successes. Candy Crush was a 15-year overnight success. Franchises have been built off the back of these. Just how hard is it to sustain and maintain that kind of player engagement and deliver good content for people?
Well, I think like Paul pointed out, there's a whole group within every company now which are live ops. So live ops means you are every day trying to introduce new events to engage your players, to keep people coming back every day. You are identifying targets within your audience to make sure that The casual players are getting what they need in the game, and the advanced players are getting what they need in the game. It's not just make a game and launch it and walk away from it. It is a constant update, constant maintenance, and constant monitoring to make sure you're doing the best job you can to maintain your audience and retain them.
Yeah, if you think about engagement, in the old days, console, you'd spend $60, you got a piece of software that was shrink wrapped, and you begged your parents for the money, so you were kind of stuck with it for a long time until you could beg them again. So the switching barriers from one game to another were pretty high. Now they're nothing. All you do is add another app to the thing, and we had a player who played our game all the time for years, and then something about some new offering caught their eye, and we never see him again. So it's a never-ending sort of battle to delight consumers, so they keep coming back to your app.
I know that I have an Xbox One at home that gets touched once every 6 months. I've got 2 kids, I run a business, I travel a lot. My gameplay has moved entirely to mobile, and I play tower defense games, I like the strategy games. Xbox is not a competition for my time. What is a competition for your users' time? Is it more Instagram, or is it other games?
I'm not sure we fully understand. We just know that these games are consumable in a snacking kind of fashion. You don't sit there and play the kind of games we make for hours on end. I think some strategy games you might, but you play them several times a day, and you do it when you have a break and you need to do something else than work, or get screamed at by your children, or scream at your children, or make dinner, or do whatever you're doing.
Well, I think the thing that makes it tough to gain attention is the fact that most games are free. This is it's called free to play. It's a model that got popular 5-6 years ago, and we're a little bit stuck with it today. But what that means is there's tons of content out there with as Paul pointed out, no barrier to entry. You can try things. If you don't like it, people give a game 30 seconds to a minute before they decide whether they're going to stick with that game or not. So there's a glut of content out there. A lot of changes lately. You see what's going on with Apple Arcade and Stadia. So they're trying to change the free-to-play model to more of a subscription model, following sort of more of a Netflix kind of business model. So we'll see what comes of that. Right now, it's you do all you can do to capture somebody's attention in that first 30 seconds to a minute to make sure they stay with your game.
So there's obviously huge opportunity. You're hiring computer scientists, creative technologists, designers. I visited a university where they're teaching computer science, and they have motion capture suites that they're doing for both television and increasingly video games and mobile games. And so with you mentioned Google Arcadia there, and with the increased power of computing, are you seeing a more sophisticated type of games develop, more almost console-esque, or is it that, is there still an audience for the snack size?
I still think you see lots of Twitch games out, as well as lots of very complex games. I think it's going to continue to be very diverse, because the range of developers, there's 400 in Seattle, but most of those developers are very small shops. They're half a dozen people that are making fun but very basic games that aren't complex, but are still very popular and very fun to use. I think that's part of the fun of picking up a mobile game, just trying it, is you play it for 10 minutes and you have a lot of fun with it, but then you move on and play something else.
Yeah. So we do read a lot of kind of doom and gloom about games, and kids spending hours playing Fortnite, for example. Historically there are issues around in-app purchases being made, but that's been dealt with through regulation. I understand that actually in Washington State there is a specific local issue that is creating some concern for games companies and for gamers. Kristina?
Sure. So part of what I do, my job is to recruit new companies to the region and to help our existing companies grow. And traditionally, there's been a great environment for that. We've had an extremely talented workforce. They work at hundreds of companies. to learn and grow their skills. We have a region that fosters innovation for when they want to spin off products and services. And of course, we have educational institutions that train our workforce for the jobs of today and tomorrow. But those opportunities have been clouded with uncertainty. The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals did something that no other court has done before. Although it's been dismissed in the lower courts, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals basically equated social games to gambling. And they reinterpreted what our laws are. They reinterpreted what our companies have been operating under for years, what they've been growing their companies under. And this uncertainty obviously makes it difficult for us to recruit new companies, but it also makes it difficult for us to retain and grow our local companies. The legal status of online games is in limbo. And we have pending litigation in Washington State that could set some precedent for other emerging technologies. And it's something we have to fix, and it's something we have to fix now.
So there's no final ruling that, gambling law applies, simply a case is being allowed to proceed along the lines of gambling regulation, even though a game is free to download, free to play, and you can never win anything. There's this uncertainty because this case has been allowed to proceed here in Washington State.
Exactly.
Right, okay. Does this happen anywhere else? Or?
Can I just jump in for
Please
a second? Just to be clear about what we're talking about, in order for something to be defined as gambling, if you look at any state that has casino gambling or online poker or whatever, there's basically three components that are required. Consideration, which is placing a bet with something of value, a chance-based outcome with the chance of winning something of value. So put $20 on the blackjack table, get dealt random cards, win, get $100 back, lose your money. What seems to be being interpreted by this federal court is that for some reason games that are free to play meet all those definitions, and they just don't. It's just factually wrong. And it's a very interesting and scary issue when you conflate social games and entertainment, games that are designed for entertainment purposes and games that are designed for gambling, and you conflate the two. It's dangerous, and it's a bad trend, and it's directly affecting people's investments here in Washington, and everybody's kind of on super high alert to see how this shakes itself out.
So is there anywhere else in the world that you know of that this kind of gambling regulation is actually being enforced and applied to this kind of entertainment?
Not that I am.
So it would be a first around the world that essentially these...
Yeah, it would be a first. I mean, we make games that are gambling-based content, so you can imagine when the industry started, the free-to-play model where people were playing slots or poker in free-to-play, not in gambling, gaming regulators around the world took notice, and so far every one of them has come to the conclusion that, well, this isn't gambling, it's free-to-play, and even though some people do use in-app purchasing to pay for the game, they're not losing their money when they play the game. They're spending their money for entertainment to unlock features or content or progress through the game faster, just like you spend $60 on your console game or put a quarter in a pinball machine or an asteroids machine. That shows you how old I am. And so, the term you're losing money on these games just is not true. You lose money in casinos. You don't lose money buying entertainment to play a game.
I lose a lot of money on Amazon deliveries arriving at my house. The worst one is when I'm traveling and I've accidentally bought something while I'm away and then the packages arrive. What's this, darling? Anyway. So people are spending money in entertainment occasionally with no chance of actually getting that nice Amazon package at home because there's no way of monetizing these games as a player. I think there are some jurisdictions where some games are banned, but we're talking about North Korea, certain Middle Eastern countries, and so Washington State could be added to that list?
Yeah, that's a great point. That, you know, it's Libya, the Sudan, North Korea, maybe Saudi Arabia, somewhere like that, and Washington State. It'd be like, wow, that would be.
This
really
is
strange.
not something I want our state to be known for. Absolutely not.
No, I mean, I'd love coming to Washington and meeting with the games companies. There's a huge tech scene here, companies that I've been working with and that we all admire, and many of you will be in the room today. It seems such an anathema that this state could be the one to say games that allow you to keep playing because you've been successful in the game and you can play a bit further. There's a pinball machine in our booth, by the way. I was going to save that to later, but come and have a play later and see if you think that's gambling. It seems very, very odd. So this must be creating a lot of concern and risk for concern for people. As a business owner in the state, how does that make you feel?
It's concerning for sure. I mean, there are two issues. The first is I've got lots of customers in Washington State, so there's a potential that they will not be able to access the game anymore if I have to firewall Washington State from our game. The worst case is that I may have to leave the state as a business owner, business operator in the state of Washington. If it looks like my games are particularly being targeted by the state, then there's a potential I may have to take my team and go elsewhere, and that's no small thing. I've run my company for 12 years. Many of the people that have worked for me, this is the third company we work together on. I have many people that work for me for over 10 years, and I really love my team, and I would hate to have to make that kind of decision.
Hey, Luke, can we just be clear that this court case involves those companies that make social casino content, but the underlying fact pattern of the case, which I think John can talk about, includes all games. All games have an extension of play feature by your gameplay, and that's the legal thing that's going on here. So we're just not talking about Washingtonians not being able to play a poker game or a slots game. It's playing every game, because every game has chance-based mechanics. Every game has extended play through your success or failure in the game.
So it sounds like it's a class action law firm, I understand. They've shopped this idea around other states, is that right, John?
Yeah, I think that's right. This is the first time this type of claim has progressed beyond the initial phase of litigation. Every other court that's had the occasion to look at this has dismissed the claim, saying that no, these are entertainment games, they're not gambling. This case that Paul just talked about is breaking new ground.
So it sounds like they've found a little bit of traction, they've gone for some easy targets, but actually there's a whole industry with much deeper pockets who seem to be next, lined up to be the next targets. Could that broader industry then be at risk as well?
I'm not a class action plaintiff's lawyer, but if they win here, there are other states with similar extended play language, which was written years and years ago into gambling statutes across 7 or 8 states for a completely different reason. Had nothing to do, of course, with social mobile games because they didn't exist. I would think they take their victory on the road and target those states, and then where it really blows up, and plaintiffs' lawyers are all about big class actions, is when they expand it to the other forms of social games, the big ones that are out there.
So there's all this uncertainty where companies are waiting to see how these cases proceed. If the worst does happen and the sky does fall, what impact could that have? John, do you have any? Sure.
So if the cases are to proceed and come out the way the plaintiffs' lawyers want them to come out, developers and operators of social games, including but not limited to social casino games, could be forced here in Washington State to turn those games off and to prevent people who live in the state from being able to play them. That would be unprecedented, but that's certainly a risk.
So we're obviously, as an industry concerned, what is that doing for the reputation of the state elsewhere? You know, it's such a glowing example of tech. There are other states that are competing for your employees, your businesses.
We have a number of different states and countries that have economic incentives for companies to locate to the region. I think Derrick can probably talk a little bit more about that, but it's something that we hear about every day. We are very lucky to have this industry in our state. They are clean, green, high-skill, high-wage jobs. It's something an industry that contributes significantly to our local economy, and I'll let Derrick talk a little bit more about the competition.
Well, firstly, I think I'd point out that I came to Seattle from Los Angeles because this is a place where I wanted to raise my family. So when I was going to continue my game career, I looked for jobs here in Seattle and found one. So this is an amazing place and a place that I enjoy living and intend to live for a very long time. To have that threatened is incredible. I can't even imagine having to give that up because of this legislation or this court case. I get brochures from random cities all the time, every few weeks. Atlanta, Birmingham, Alabama, places all over the United States that are trying to incentivize us to move our offices. But this is a place that I have a home and a family and where I want to stay.
So, in this current market, with this uncertainty hanging over your head, and if I were to start a game studio today, and I love visiting Seattle, it's actually my favorite city in the States. You can tell I'm not local, can't you? What would I invest here? Would it be a good idea?
Well, I think you're talking about an uncertain business climate, and that uncertainty does not breed new companies. Uncertainty does not breed growth. And it's something.
Yes, we've been living in a state of uncertainty for 3 years in my country, and we still have no idea which continent we want to be part of.
So we definitely need to work on fixing this and making sure we have the business environment for all our companies to succeed and to create new products and new social games, new genres of social games, because I think there's a lot of new ones on the cusp.
And it's not just a few games developers that we're talking about here. We're talking about thousands of jobs, well-paid, highly skilled.
Yep, 23,000 jobs in the state.
But it's not just computer scientists and developers. It's the hosting services, the ad networks, the app stores, the platforms. So there's a very deep stack of people who are potentially affected if this industry, games, essentially all games, goes under overnight in this state. So it would be a very strange thing to happen. So are there some routes that we can explore of how this might be resolved?
So it's a good question. I think there are. I mean, ultimately, the case that we've been talking about hinges on an interpretation of Washington state law, right? An older statute that was never intended or designed to encompass new technology like mobile games, mobile gaming. So what can be done? Well, one of the courts here in Washington state could issue a ruling confirming that the statutes at issue, right, aren't meant to cover social games, which are entertainment, not gambling, right? Or the state legislature could also make a tweak to one of the existing laws to make clear what all the panelists have been talking about, which is these games, these social games like Clash of Clans, Match 3 games like Candy Crush, it's simply not gambling.
Does anyone have anything else they want to bring up today to discuss? What something bright and cheery to finish on, perhaps?
There aren't any bigger risks to talk about than this one, so anything we would add would be,
And having had a look around the entire world of issues facing games, I've never seen anything like this potential risk of elimination of an entire sector at a country level or at a state level. So it is a very, it's currently an existential risk. It's currently uncertain. It's not a fait accompli. But but it's obviously very concerning. Yeah. Well, thank you very much for your time today. Please feel free to visit the ISJ booth. It's right in the hall. We have a pinball machine, as I said. If you can beat my highest score, you can have some freebies. Please join me in thanking my panel for spending their time today talking about the future of social games. So thank you all for joining us. And I'll be in and out of the conference, but if you want to talk further with myself or any of the panelists, we have a couple of colleagues there who can take your contact details, and I'll be in touch. I'm here quite often, so we can have follow-up meetings if not on the phone. Thank you. I hope we haven't given you too much indigestion during your lunch session, and have a fantastic conference. Thank you.